Renowned 60s photographer Rowland Scherman worked in Washington, D.C., taking photographs of John F. Kennedy and the March on Washington. He was the first photographer for the Peace Corps. He worked for Life magazine, photographing iconic musicians of the 60s. Now Scherman and his photos are the subject of a documentary screening at the Museum of Photographic Arts this weekend. It's called Eye on the 60s. Take a look.
I see light shining out of people. Angelic light or God's light, call it what you will, but I can see God's light shining out of people. Not just auras, but something. I trip the shutter when that moment happens.
He's still open to things. He's still looking for an adventure every day.
Chris Sweeto directed the film and joins me with more about it. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Peggy.
Now, Chris, Rowland, I understand, is now 76 and he lives in Cape Cod. Is he still working?
He's the type of guy that photography is his life, and he shoots every day, various digital formats mostly, yes. But it's ingrained. He's a photographer.
It's in his blood.
Yeah.
How did you first come across his work?
The short story, I walked into an art gallery, and by accident, one that's near my house. I live in Eastham, Massachusetts, and this one is in Orleans, the next town over. And I was a gallery I'd never been in, and there were 45 photographs on the wall of my heroes. And there was a uniformity and a beauty to the photos, and they were very candid. And they looked like they were the work of, excuse me, one person. And I asked the guy that worked there, I said, who did this? And he goes, Rowland Scherman. And I go, can I meet him? And he goes, sure. So I think at that moment I wanted to make a film about it because having grown up in the 1960s as I was a little boy, I'm trying to process that part of my own life. And to know somebody who was next to John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and President Johnson and Martin Luther King and all that, and the Beatles, lo and behold, this was an opportunity, so I pursued him, and he agreed to make a film.
In the documentary Eye on the 60s, your focus is as much on Rowland, the man, as his photographs. What did you find unique about him?
Well, he doesn't answer to anybody. He's got a spirit and a will that's strong. That's probably a uniqueness that sets him apart from most people. And I think to get into kind of situations, you know, back then, it was skill, charm, looks, all that kind of stuff that you know, can make for success. And there's a will to achieve, and not only that, an incredible talent as well.
Well, back on the March on Washington, Rowland took one particular picture of a young African-American girl who had this very expressive face, and he didn't know the girl until recently. Tell us about that story.
Well, her name is Edith Lee Payne, and she lives in Detroit. And it was her mother took her to the March on Washington for her birthday. She was 12 years old, and in the photograph she's holding a banner that was the official banner of the march. And Rowland was 26 years old and had an unlimited pass that day with the U.S. Information Agency. And Rowland is a portrait-making guy, he likes to say, and he zeroed in on her for about 4 shots. And all these shots of the March on Washington, which I think are the best take that any photographer had that day. You know, they're all in the National Archives. And she found out about it a few years ago. And he did not know who she was, and they met this year. And so it's a fascinating
Just this
story.
year, and we can see by the pictures on the screen, just so soulful in this picture. That would be interesting to, in your movie, to see this sort of focus on reuniting with his former subjects in photography. Do you think people will come out of your film understanding the 60s a little bit better? Is that your hope, or do you have another reason for people to come see it?
Well, I was here in San Diego last year. I gave a TED Talk, and at the end of the March on Washington segment is a shot of Jackie Robinson. And some very educated young guy, about the age of 35, came up and said, "That's really nice, but who was that guy at the end with the white hair, distinguished with the eyes far apart?" I said, "That's Jackie Robinson." And I think that's why you make films, because there's a gap that happens in information from one age group to the next. Everybody's into different things, and this is valuable. I think it's the greatest day in our history. And so it's important to know these folks.
Okay, well, film director Chris Sweeto, thanks so much. And I want to let folks know that a special screening of your film, Eye on the 60s, takes place this Sunday at 7 p.m. at the Museum of Photographic Arts in Balboa Park.